Hello and welcome to Have You Heard, Armor Animal Health's weekly video series. My name is Jenna Gaastra, and I'm a customer service representative in our global sales department. I've been with Armor for a little over 4 years now. We are broadcasting live from sunny and 70 degrees Stoughton, Wisconsin. Please let us know where you are viewing from today. If you have any questions throughout the video, please feel free to leave them in the comments section and we will get them answered for you. Today we are being joined by Renee Sutkay. She is the Associate Director at Journey Mental Health in Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome, Renee. How are you doing today?
Doing good, thanks.
Good. We really appreciate you being here today. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Journey?
Yeah, so I am an associate director of one of our community-based programs at Journey Mental Health Center. So we work with folks in a community-based setting, not typically an office-based setting, who need help sort of all around their lives. And we work with them on their recovery. So vocational recovery, substance use recovery, mental health recovery, and support folks in all endeavors of their lives. I also grew up on a dairy farm and am happy to talk about mental health stigma and dairy farming today.
Great. Sounds like you guys are doing a lot of good work there. So I guess let's just jump into it here, Renee. Mental health seems like it's a really broad, overwhelming term for a lot of people. Can you please give us a definition of it and what are some common types of mental illness?
Yeah, so if you think about mental health, also think about other parts of our bodies that require health, like cardiac health or bone health. So oftentimes when we get a little bit older, maybe we take calcium to make sure we have good bone health. We do lots of other things for our brains to make sure we have good mental health, like going for walks and taking supplements and making sure we get enough sun and vitamin D and making sure we're stimulating our brain in useful ways like reading and crossword puzzles and those kind of things. And mental illness is when we have a problem with our brain or our brain's not quite functioning in the way that we want it to function so we can get our daily tasks done. Mental health can affect our whole bodies and the way our brain works obviously affects our whole body. Some types of common mental illnesses that folks struggle with or mental health symptoms that folks struggle with can be something like depression or anxiety. Those things can be ongoing or they can be situational. So if you're experiencing an additional stressor like COVID-19, for example, or financial stress, certainly that can increase depression and anxiety symptoms. Sometimes folks have a genetic predisposition to depression and anxiety, and it's an ongoing issue that they deal with sort of throughout their lives and need different supports and different things to help them through that at different points in their life. It's not recovery isn't a sort of a single line. You don't kind of go up or down in terms of mental health recovery. It's kind of ongoing and something that there are bumps along the way and you're always kind of learning as you experience those bumps. There are other more persistent mental illnesses that people face, like schizophrenia and bipolar illness or schizoaffective disorder, just kind of in between the two. And certainly those are mental illnesses that people work through their recovery on and have really successful and wonderful lives while they also support their good brain health and manage those symptoms of mental illness.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds like it's kind of a lot to take in, but it makes sense to, take calcium when you're older. Got to work on your brain too. So Renee, in the farming community and rural communities in general, it seems like mental health is a pretty taboo subject. Don't want to talk about it. Don't want to think about it, things like that. Why do you think there's such a stigma around mental health?
Well, farmers listening, think about what you talk about when you talk to your friends, probably your other friends sometimes, little gossiping action going on. So that's one reason I think oftentimes we don't want to delve into sort of what's going on in terms of our mental health situation. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to be vulnerable and talk about things that are going on with you personally. Oftentimes there is a lot of shame around having mental health symptoms or not being able to function in a way that you think you can or that you could have once. And that's hard to talk about. It's hard to admit what people might think as a weakness or a failure. I certainly don't think mental health symptoms are a weakness or a failure. I think that mental health symptoms are an opportunity to learn and grow and and improve on different skills that you might not have even known that you had. It's an opportunity to learn about resilience and to gain that resilience in your life. And that can be a life-changing, life-altering opportunity for people. So really it's about that reframe. If you're struggling with anxiety or you have a stressor that your combine broke in a way that you can't afford to fix, but you need to fix it to harvest your corn. And that's really stressful. But if you can get through that situation, you learn about the strength that you have, which is not a weakness, certainly. I think that there's a lot of stigma around mental health in rural communities because in our community, we might hear to suck it up. We might be struggling with something and we might tell somebody about it and they might tell us to suck it up and stop complaining and get your work done. And that's oftentimes a response I certainly have heard over time in my growing up, not bad or good. It's just something to be aware of and have knowledge of. So you don't have to suck it up. Sometimes we need help. Sometimes we need help from a professional. Sometimes when we can't fix our combine, we call a mechanic and we get a little help and advice before we wreck it. So sometimes we should talk to a therapist before we wreck our brains more than maybe we have with, coping by using substances, for example, or by drinking too much.
Sure. So you had mentioned just now a therapist. So that would be a treatment option for people. What would some other treatment options be available for people who are struggling?
Yeah, so there are lots of components to mental health treatment or engaging in mental health recovery. Certainly talk therapy can be one of those things. Vocational counseling can be one of those things, or peer support or individual skill development. Those are kind of some options that we provide in our program in terms of holistic treatment. Exercise can be a mental health treatment or something that supports your mental health. And certainly medications can be one part of that piece to the puzzle of mental health treatment. Mental health treatment, like anything else, there's a sort of a gradation of treatment options. So folks receiving outpatient treatment and going into an office or using telehealth to get services at a clinic is sort of one way to provide that treatment. Another more intensive option is an intensive outpatient program, meaning daily or 4 days a week, different kinds of group therapy that folks utilize, or inpatient options to ensure stabilization and safety for folks who are experiencing more of a crisis situation. So huge range of services in there. And really it's important to think about what is best for you, best for your family, and what is gonna, what do you need? Do you need safety and stabilization of the hospitalization, or do you need ongoing support from a therapist maybe after that hospitalization or somewhere in the middle?
Sure. So what do you think are some barriers for people not seeking treatment? Are they just afraid to, or do they not have the resources? What do you think some barriers are?
Probably all of those things. Oftentimes too, typically you try to fix your combine first yourself before you call a mechanic. You don't want to spend the money on someone else to fix something that you can already fix. So if you're struggling with anxiety, depression, maybe drinking a little too much, oftentimes in our sort of rural culture, we think about fixing that ourselves and we can handle it. And maybe you talked to somebody about it and they told you to suck it up. So that really reinforced that fix it yourself mentality that folks have. Certainly time is a barrier, especially right now on a beautiful 70-degree day. If you've got an appointment to see a therapist and you got to finish combining your corn, you're probably going to prioritize that corn combining versus driving 45 minutes to a therapy appointment. Obviously right now we're not doing too much in office work, but getting cleaned up, having something to eat, drive 45 minutes, have that hour of therapy, drive 45 minutes back home, that's an afternoon or a morning that is sort of gone. And is that really productive when that whole time you're thinking about how you got to get going and how you got work to do? Certainly insurance can be a barrier in that way too, and co-pays or meeting deductibles or being underinsured so that therapy isn't a coverable option can be a problem. Oftentimes clinics are far away from our sort of rural farming location. So the car ride is long and it's extra fuel that you have to pay for and time wasted. So those, I think, are kind of the big barriers, other than not wanting to go. If the clinic that your insurance covers is in downtown Stoughton and somebody's at the bakery having coffee and they watch you walk in for your therapy appointment, that also can lead to more stigma and sort of more of that gossiping idea. And nobody really wants people to be kind of talking about them in that way. So that certainly can be a barrier as well.
Sure. Actually, Renee, we just had a comment here. The viewer said, I think it's very hard for some people to seek treatment because of time availability. There's always animals to feed and crops to harvest. So in times of COVID here, with telehealth, on the rise, is that something that would be an option for people? You could be picking your corn here and talking to your therapist, or, in a group setting.
Certainly there's been more allowances in our work around reimbursement for phone work and therapy work. And I'm hopeful that continues, that insurance will continue to pay for teletherapy because it is such a big benefit. And I completely agree with that comment. Your priorities are not yourself necessarily when you're trying to get everything done when it's 70 degrees and sunny in southern Wisconsin on a day like today. And on top of that, you might cancel or no show or forget about that therapy appointment. So then that's kind of a red mark on your record there. We don't like it when people no show on us. But that's part of this too. So utilizing telehealth is great. There are lots of we at Journey, we use Zoom. So people oftentimes have a Zoom app on their phone and we can Zoom in with people. We can have shorter sessions, a half-hour session on a nice day like today when all you have is about a half hour. Right now we can do some phone work, which is great too. Telehealth hopefully is here to stay for us. And hopefully without connectivity being an issue, it can be helpful for farmers too.
Great. Glad to hear that. So Renee, what are some warning signs if for people going through a mental health crisis?
Yeah, so the first people who are going to notice that something's up with someone is probably the person that someone is safest with, right? So a spouse, a sibling, a really good friend, a child, an adult child, or a young child for that matter. And oftentimes the identified person sort of struggling with a mental health symptom may not even notice those warning signs in themselves. So mood changes, certainly increase in crabbiness, if you will, or lack of engagement around marriage or those kind of things, typical stress responses that we see. If my partner is stressed, there's a way that he acts and I sort of know that he's stressed and I want to support him through that. But oftentimes he doesn't know, I know he's stressed before he knows he's stressed. So that certainly is the first thing to notice. Certainly change in sleep. So sleeping too much, sleeping not enough, waking up in the middle of the night, change in eating habits. So not feeling hungry, overeating, just changes in the typical routine and the changes in the typical pattern that someone has. Oftentimes our first line of defense in Wisconsin, especially when we're struggling with mental health symptoms, can be an increase in drinking a little too much beer or alcohol. So really paying attention to that in a spouse or partner or family member. If you notice that their alcohol intake is more, or that they're drinking to the point of intoxication more frequently, will be something to pay attention to and notice. And avoiding conversations, avoiding hard things, avoiding paying bills, avoiding church, avoiding other supportive activities that people are typically interested in and that are usually helpful for them.
Sure. So how would you approach somebody if you've been noticing some of these warning signs in them?
Good question, Jenna. It's not to say, geez, Jenna, you're really crabby today, which not overly helpful to the sort of person who seems a little bit crabby. But maybe a better approach is, wow, Jenna, are you feeling okay? So, maybe something's up today. Or your response to that question I asked you, I felt a little like your response might have been a little bit harsh. It felt harsh to me. So I'm expressing how I feel in comparison to the behavior that you're outputting in that scenario versus sort of complaining or recognizing your behavior. So it's a very subtle difference, but an important one in terms of engaging around someone whose mood might have changed or something is different. It's also really important to come at someone with a non-judgmental and supportive response. So really understanding that, something might be going on with that person. I don't necessarily know what that is. I don't necessarily know, I don't have to know what that is, but I can say, hey, I care about you. Seems like things are not how they typically are with you, and I want you to know I care about you. And if you want to talk about it, I'm here. If you don't, that's fine. If you need something, let me know.
Sure. Those are great ways to try and help somebody out that you care about and, you want them to be doing better. So what, if somebody is contemplating suicide, are the warning signs different in that situation?
Sometimes they certainly can be. Sometimes folks will sell things that they care about a lot, to sell things they don't care about a lot, but that they also care about a lot, or be giving their possessions away. Sometimes people, this is a hard one right now because nobody's really doing anything on the weekend or thinking about, Thanksgiving or Christmas really. But if folks start to shut down around things that are important to them, that are in the future, and they're not, a lot of times when folks are thinking about suicide, they're thinking about not waking up tomorrow or not waking up next week. So they're not thinking about, Thanksgiving is around the corner, or something fun happening this weekend, or something else that they might be looking forward to, maybe watching the Packer game, or, very simple things. So if you're talking to a friend who you normally talk about what'd you think of the Packers defense last week? And they don't comment on it at all, maybe investigating that a little bit further is helpful. Like, oh, normally we talk about how terrible the Packers defense was last week, and they were terrible last week. So hopefully they'll be better tonight. But, normally we talk about that. Something wrong? What's going on? Are you going to watch the Packer game this weekend? Do you maybe want to get together, or can I check on you at halftime? Or, so just those kind of subtle things to investigate a little bit further to really see what's going on. It's never a bad idea to ask people if they are thinking about ending their life, if you're concerned about that. If you ask someone if they're thinking about ending their life, it is not going to make someone think about ending their life if they weren't already. So please, if you're concerned about someone ending their life, ask, and ask how you can be helpful. And if you're concerned, and tell someone about it. Don't hold that in. There are lots of resources and help and crisis units in every county in Wisconsin, and national suicide hotlines. And of course, the police are an excellent resource too, if you're concerned about someone's safety imminently.
Sure. So yeah, what if you're in a situation where your loved one wasn't responsive to your help? What would you do in that situation, especially if you were afraid that they were going to harm themselves or harm someone else?
Yeah, so I would call the crisis unit in my county. And in Dane County, our crisis unit is at Journey Mental Health Center, and I would call them and talk to them and say, hey, what should I do? Every situation is unique and different, certainly. So without a scenario in front of me, I can't say do this or do that. But I think the answer is always to call the crisis unit, because the staff who work 24/7, 365 days a week are life-saving staff. They love what they do, and they're happy to be helpful. And they're a resource that you always have at your fingertips if there's an imminent risk. And certainly the police, if someone has a plan to end their life and they're unable to stay safe and they're going to enact that plan, you're concerned about that, please call the police. Please stay with the person and call the police. That's really important and will be helpful in saving their life.
Sure. So you had mentioned a few resources there, your county crisis unit, what have you. What are some other resources available to folks out there?
Yeah, so the Wisconsin Farm Center has a great program right now. There's a farmer wellness program, so lots of resources, but part of that farmer wellness program is a 24/7 staffed crisis hotline specifically for farmers. So on the other end of that hotline, you'll get a counselor who's not only counselor trained, but a counselor who's familiar with rural culture and farming culture and farmers. And that Farm Center program also has a voucher program. So a therapist can apply to be a provider on that voucher program or their agency. Again, it's a rural community farmer kind of person who's also a licensed therapist who can provide therapy. It's sort of like a farming employee assistance program. So you get about 3 sessions and you can work with that therapist for 3 sessions or more. So the Farm Center and the therapist work together to get you sort of what you need. And if you are underinsured and don't have insurance coverage, that's helpful in terms of covering long-term therapy. They can get you connected with resources that way. And if you have insurance, they can also work to get you referred to a provider, an ongoing provider that your insurance covers too. But they have lots of really great resources on their website. So Google them away or give them a call. So the county crisis line, like I mentioned, and then of course the National Alliance for Mental Illness, which started right here in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a grassroots volunteer organization that supports people with mental health symptoms and their families. And they have lots of great resources about symptoms, mental illness, how to support someone who is thinking about suicide, how to support someone with anxiety, depression, psychosis, any of those kind of things. So they're a great place to start when you need help. Typically, each county or county consortium has a NAMI chapter themselves, but NAMI Wisconsin is a good place to start for information, and they can get you kind of to the county where you live, where you can find some support and help. And it's a great, like I said, great place to start, really supportive people who are volunteering their time, who want to be helpful. There's another program new to me in Greene County. It's called TUGS. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's a farmer in Greene County started that program who has had experience with suicidal ideation, has had a suicide attempt, really great speaker, powerful. And that program is really helpful. It's a kind of a group setting. And I think it is happening via telehealth or Zoom or Skype or whatever right now. So it can be really available to folks if thinking about driving to Monroe is a trek.
Sure. So it sounds like there's a few great resources out there or available to people to use. So Renee, I have a couple of takeaways that I thought were really important here today. Is to be open and supportive of people that you're trying to help. And to not be afraid to use the resources that are available to you. Do you have any big takeaways for people today?
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask. Ask the people you care about that what's going on for them, and make sure that they know that you care about them. Make sure that they know that you're there. Make sure that you can connect them to someone else who knows that they're there. Whether it, the other thing to think about, growing up in a dairy farm, my grandma's door was open always. Didn't matter who you were or what was going on, her door was open. So who's in your neighborhood who has that open door? Who can you go see? Who can you, have a cup of coffee with? Because there's probably somebody who's really not judgmental and who really cares about you and who can help you through something, even if it's just that non-judgmental ear. So reach out, and both ways. If you're struggling, reach out. And if you know someone who's struggling, ask them about it. Don't let them just continue to don't let their symptoms continue to increase in a way that their functioning is impacted, or their substance using is impacted in a way that has gone kind of too far.
Sure. Well, Renee, we really want to thank you for taking time to talk with us today. We hope everybody learned something valuable and potentially life-saving information today in our discussion here. This video has been recorded, so feel free to go ahead and go back and view it on the Armor Animal Health Facebook page or our YouTube channel. If you're watching the recorded version and have a question, you can always comment and we can get back to you with an answer. We also want to make sure you tune in next week when Dr. Larry and Ashley Anderson will be discussing tips for making informed decisions on implants.
Thank you.